Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. I'm Phil, along with Logan and John today. It's episode number 208, and that number signifies that we have more than 200 back episodes for you to binge listen while you're driving or mowing the lawn or cleaning the kitchen or just hanging out in your shop. So if you want to find out more of what we've been talking about on past episodes, you want to check that out wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's one of those big box stores or your local podcastery. You can check that out there or go to shopnotes.com/podcast. Today's episode, we're going to talk about a brand new issue of Woodsmith Magazine that's hitting mailboxes now. And we'll also do probably one of our last previews for Woodworking in America before this thing goes live. So thanks for listening, everybody. This episode is brought to you by Titebond. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp times to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com. Because of a quirk in the space-time continuum, the recording of this podcast happened before the previous podcast dropped. So I don't have any new listener comments for us to share.
AKA Logan forgot to tell our editor that we recorded.
Quirks happen mysteriously. You never know how all this stuff occurs.
You're welcome.
Who can understand time and how it works?
Let's just be very clear. Phil may be suggesting that you go back and binge listen all of our episodes. I do not condone that. Like, I say you need to take a break, and the way I help that is by forgetting to tell our editor that we have episodes done. Whoops.
Do not consume more than 2 episodes in an 8-hour period.
Right.
You might end up with diarrhea.
Mm-hmm.
That was dark and specific.
Yeah.
I know this from experience.
But if that's something you need, then go ahead.
Yep. Maybe it's just going to be one of those work weeks, and you just need a day to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Or you're having a colonoscopy. Anyways.
Sold.
Fantastic.
Yep.
All right. For the Woodworking in America portion of today's episode, want to mention we have Gary Rogowski coming from the Pacific Northwest, the Portland, right? Columbia River area. He's Lyle.
Yep. That would be Portland area, I think.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Clearly, as everybody can find out, is my Pacific Northwest geography is a little off right now. So anyway, Gary's going to be here. He runs a school out there, the Northwest Woodworking School. Does a lot of online education stuff. He's been a frequent contributor to Fine Woodworking, both in print and in videos. Does a lot of really cool stuff. He's going to be talking about hand planes, and he did a little video promo for us on that hand plane that he shows off in that video is pretty cool. It's a shop-made wood-bodied hand plane.
Krenov style.
It's got a little Krenov style to it, but not as... I mean, there's some Krenov style planes that... Like Krenov had a very straight from the bandsaw kind of feel on a lot of his. And kind of faceted, carved. And this one has Gary's own unique take on that, which I think is pretty cool. So check that out on our Instagrams or on the YouTube as well. So the other Woodworking in America plug for this episode is Logan. And yesterday, the last 2 days, John and I were out at the Popular Woodworking World headquarters, helping Logan assemble his new Sawmill. We were helping Logan assemble his new sawmill, and he's back.
Yep. Had to go tighten a bolt quick.
He listened to 2 episodes in a row.
Yep.
I did.
Out for a second.
Oh, man.
All right. So you want to talk about your sawmill?
Yeah. So we've spent the last 2 days. Oh, my gosh. My quads are really sore. It's very obvious that I don't crouch down that often because I'm walking around like I'm 95 years old and just rode a horse for 17 miles. Like, I'm sore. But we have been assembling a Logasol sawmill. It is a B1001 hydraulic sawmill. Got to give a shout out to my boy Bob that's going to take possession of the Norwood sawmill now. But we have been putting this together over the last couple days, bringing back great memories of me standing in my driveway putting together Norwood. And very much like the Norwood sawmill, it's like, wow, we're making really good progress. And there's lots of parts left still.
Mm-hmm.
And much like the Norwood, there are kind of cryptic instructions. I don't want to say cryptic. Like, they're pretty accurate once you decipher what they're saying. And there's no words, so it's very hard to decipher.
Once you do it the wrong way, you quickly realize, oh, this is what they meant in the instructions, and then you go back and redo it.
What I thought was interesting is almost like a very complex Lego set.
Mm-hmm.
There are several assembly manuals.
Yes, there
and
are.
All the bags of parts are numbered and separate.
Yep.
Some are labeled, some are just numbered.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But, like the trend for a while now on assembly manuals, like John said, is other than hardware call outs, there's really no words. It's just pictograms. In the idea that then you don't have to have like an English, a Spanish, a French, whatever section. Swedish, for example. But that doesn't mean that the pictograms are universally understood. There is a certain amount of, how would I say this, translation or assimilation that you need to do where it's like, now I see what they're trying to get at with this series of drawings. It's not necessarily super clear.
Yeah. And I will say, putting it together with, so John, myself, Phil, we're doing a lot of the assembly. Then we have 2 camera operators generally. Occasionally there's 3 people there. So it's like, 6 people. So it's like, you're kind of rushing around. Like, and I said this while we were doing it. Like, I'm super stressed as we're doing this because it's like, I'm trying to keep us moving along and not just have everybody sitting around wasting their time while I'm deciphering stuff. If you stood there and looked at the instructions, understood how the parts went in, and then did it, it's fine. But as I'm trying to bounce back and forth, there's a couple of things that we had to take out and flip around because it's they were in the wrong orientation or whatever. But overall, it's went together really well. And much like a Lego set, you kind of come to understand how the parts go together on the frame. So the frame's the big part, right? That's obviously the bed of the mill. And then you have all these add-ons. And that's why there's multiple manuals, because you could buy this as the manual mill that is just the bed, the log clamps, and the head. And then you have nothing else to add on. But say you had that, and then 2 years down the road, you ordered the hydraulic kit. So that comes with a separate manual. But then that original manual for installing or assembling the bed says, if you are installing the hydraulic kit at this point, do not do steps 4, 5, and 6. But then the hydraulic manual says, if you have a manual mill, start here. If you do not have a manual mill, start here. And it's there's all these I'm making it sound a lot more clear than what it reads, because it is a Swedish. It is a Swedish manual. So we were making the joke because most of us our knowledge of Swedish manufacturing is IKEA. So we keep making the joke that it's an IKEA sawmill, where it's like you're kind of like reading an IKEA manual as you put this thing together. Mm-hmm. It is engineered so much better than an IKEA piece of furniture, though. Like there was only one or two things that did not fit precisely. The rollers, I had to grind a weld down a little bit just to get it to slip in, and it was like minuscule how much I had to grind it. So like everything fits together and is engineered really, really well. But like think of like the IKEA type assembly, and that's kind of what this is like. But it's designed and built really well. So it's pretty cool. I'm a little disappointed that we were missing a pallet. We were missing the trailer kit. And that was just the logistics of several sawmills coming in a shipping container from Sweden. One pallet just did not make the trailer and truck, which is kind of, on hindsight, I didn't have room anyways. Like we would not have been able to get it in there anyways. So, but I would really like to have that here so we can just get everything up and running, because I really want to play with the levers and make everything move. So it's been fun. I know, and I told you guys this while we were doing this assembly process, is I hear a lot in the sawmilling community, like, oh, I just want to buy a mill that is put together. Like, I want to buy a mill that I drive to their assembly factory, pick it up, and drive away with it, and it's ready to go. I don't want to have to put it together. The thing with putting it together and building it like this is that you intimately understand that sawmill. Like you put every nut and bolt on that sawmill for the most part. So if something goes wrong, something breaks, or if you need to think outside the box on how to use something, it's like, okay, I know how this went together, so I know how to troubleshoot. I know the limitations, or I know what I can do to change those limitations. So yeah, it's been fun. I've had a good time doing it. I wish it was about 15 degrees cooler while we were doing it, even though it was like 70 degrees. I'm just dripping sweat. It's a combination of fat and sweat and stress probably. So, but it's been fun. I did order a box of carbide tipped bandsaw blades. I had a large investment in bandsaw blades for my other sawmill, for the Norwood. I don't think my wife listens to this podcast, so I could probably say safely that I have $4,000 or $5,000 in sawmill blades for that other sawmill. Because for the longest time, I was just ordering new blades and not having them sharpen. Now that Bobby Three Fingers has a blade sharpener, we sharpen them. Right. But I did spring for a set of carbide tipped bandsaw blades.
Okay.
Those are here, ready to go. So we won't put one of those nice blades on right away. We'll put it's a Bacho, BACHO, HCO, whatever it is. I think it's a Swedish blade manufacturer. They send one of those blades with the sawmill. So I have one of those. That's a high carbon blade. That's a kind of your standard run of the mill saw blade. We'll put that one on first, because generally, if you're going to throw off a saw blade, it's the first time you start up a mill, because you have one tension not right or something. So
right. Well, Bacho wonder if they're a steel company, because like I have a scraper, a card scraper that's a Bacho, and I think long ago Ted Rafe, who used to work here, had a set of Bacho chisels, which were super nice. Mm-hmm. I really like that set of chisels.
Swedish steel is a good steel. So. But no, it's been both a walk down memory lane and like, oh my God, I'm doing this again. Like putting it together. Because then it's like, all right, the next thing is, after we're done podcasting, I'm going to go start running hydraulic lines, which means get the creeper out, lay on my back, and just run them underneath the mill, and zip time out of the way, all that stuff.
Yeah. One thing that I was interested, we've made the connection between putting the mill together and a Lego set. And my brother and I, and then my kids, kind of nerded out on Lego things. And there was a while where you could watch videos, or we got the Lego magazine where they talked about kind of philosophy of design, on how you design a Lego set so that it as every piece goes on, not only are you adding to the look of it, but every piece has a function structurally on it. And in thinking about a sawmill, a portable sawmill that comes in a series of boxes and just bolts together, you get the idea where it's like, yeah, it feels like you got to be constantly tightening a lot of bolts. But watching you put that together, it was interesting that you have this big frame section, but it's like every piece that went onto it overlapped the joint and seam of another piece, so that when those were all bolted together, all of a sudden it's like every time you hit the impact wrench on something, like the whole thing just got a little bit more stable.
Yeah. Yep. Every time you add something, everything gets a little bit more rigid. And I think John had already taken off yesterday, because the next part, so basically at this point, we have the frame together. All the hydraulics are on. Now it's at the point of running hydraulic hoses from the functions, so like the turner, the loader, the clamps, all that stuff, to the control valve, which is up front at the operator station, and then hooking the operator station up to the hydraulic power pack. But the next big thing after that is to put the head on. Okay, so the head gets picked up and put on the sawmill track with the skid loader, and then we can start hooking up some of the smart set stuff for the automatic feed and all that stuff. But before you do that, you have to be able to level the track. Like, you have to be able to make sure that track is nice and flat and straight and not twisted or anything. So this is just, again, an image of Swedish engineering. There are end caps on the end of the sawmill that say Lagasol. They're nameplates. They just look decorative, but those nameplates on the end where they overlap the track have little U cutouts for wrapping a string around, so you can tension a string to check the track level. I mean, just very, very thorough and thoughtful. So I was like, you know what? Like, I really wish we could get the trailer kit on here before we level the tracks. But then I start thinking about it. I'm like, there's always a little bit of flex when you put the trailer kit on. Like, when you go to set up a mill, like, there's always a little bit of flex. Like, it's not perfectly rigid. Even, solid welded steel frames are not perfectly rigid. They flex. So I'm like, I'm just going to run a string line right now, see how flat those tracks are. And then if they're flat enough, we'll tighten up. They were freaking dead nuts on. Like, I ran that string, and I'm like, there was a couple spots where the track, because the track is made up of two pieces of steel sandwiched in between nuts and bolts, and there's a couple sections where those tracks were misaligned a little bit that I had to push down before I cinched the bolts up, but it was like dead on. And I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah, in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, you had both rails
Tracks
all leveled and fleshed out. So it was really cool to see.
Yeah, which kind of annoyed me, because it's like I should have just had our camera operator stick around so we could then just drop the head on.
Right.
But, is what it is. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I am hoping by this time, we're recording this on a Thursday. I'm hoping by next Thursday, there is a log sitting on that sawmill getting cut.
Okay.
So
that's
my hope.
All right.
Yeah.
Do that for the next podcast. You could we'll mill
live
it
at the sawmill.
Mill it live at the sawmill.
Yep.
Special thanks to our sponsor for today's episode. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com. CHÖNKÅTRÖNKK goes Swedish, I believe. So
CHÖNKÅTRÖNKK. That's my terrible Swedish accent. I apologize to all of our Swedish listeners.
Yeah.
For everybody
this is
who
going
buys
around the world.
Yeah, for everybody who buys lumber from CHÖNKÅTRÖNKK, know that you will now be getting a jar of lingonberry jam with it.
Oh man, I would go the meatballs instead of the jam, but that's just me.
Yeah. or the like some lox. That would be really delicious right now. Cold smoked salmon.
Not down with the lox. Nope.
It's so good. All right. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today, and I'm going to have John hold it up, is the new issue of Woodsmith Magazine is hitting mailboxes right now. And the reason that I know that is because a lot of people are calling in about some customer service questions about one of the projects. So I wanted to kind of walk through some of the things that were in there, some of the things that we have highlighted.
I had to grab my issue because
yeah, man,
I have it too.
Yes.
And because I don't work on Woodsmith stuff anymore, these are always new to me.
Right. See, so it's brand new for Logan today too.
Yeah.
So to get things started, John has a project in here that I wanted him to talk about.
Which project is it? See, we're getting so far ahead here that this was like, seems like it was months ago.
Right. Which it was.
So, yeah. So
okay, hold on. I have not. I know where some of these designers are. I'm gonna say that it is the keepsake box. That's John's.
It is the keepsake box.
Yeah.
So
that was just a guess without flipping to the page.
Flipping all the way. It got pushed all the way to the back. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Save the best for last, I guess.
Right.
So,
Well, we just had to we had to put something back there to get people to flip all the way to the back of the magazine.
Read all the way to the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
is that somebody's cigar cutter in the box propping it out?
I'm guessing
that's fantastic. That is awesome. Makes me happy.
Yes, it's a keepsake box. It's got a flip up lid in it, and then dividers on the inside. And yeah, it looks like it was propped like. Let's try to find the most masculine stuff to put in there. We got some golf tees, some mints, a pocket knife, wallet.
Oh, I thought that was Nicorette gum.
Yeah, probably. So you can quit smoking cigars. And then a keychain. So you can think of any more masculine stuff. So
I can't.
Yeah.
The best part is in that inset photo, I know what it is for real, but off to the right there, I know that it's a lamp, but to me, it looks like a section of flex hose just kind of balancing on the table.
Like you built a lamp out of your dust collection pipe.
Yeah. There's something. There's a project.
Yeah.
So
I believe they call it the EDC, John, the everyday carry.
Yeah.
That's what's in there. Is Rob Petrie wrote that article. And I think a lot of that stuff is his. So,
okay,
so there you go.
Yeah,
he is the manliest man among us.
Right,
he is. He wins.
Yep.
So, but yeah. So I mean, with these small projects like boxes and stuff, it's hard to. It's like how do you design it without being like just a box? Like how do you fill out pages with woodworking techniques? And so I went with miters and splined corners on it, and
I like the lid. I'm a fan of the lid with the lift in it. I like that.
Yep. So very simple.
I like the hinges that you used on that lid. We used them on a box a number of years ago.
Yeah,
and
I think we did that on the TV show.
Yes.
But yeah, that's where I've seen them before, and it's so rather than
you watched the TV show and saw it.
I saw it on the TV show. I was going back and rewatching. So yeah. So rather than just like drilling pins through the sides of the box and having it done that way, I think we got them from Lee Valley, but they're just like little pins, and they have springs on them, and then you leave a kind of an access hole and then there's a little like ridge or ring in there, so you can go in there with like an awl and grab them and pull those back out if you need to as you're fitting the box.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would just be like kind of assembling this with the lid in there and the pins, and you wouldn't be able to get in and out and kind of fine tune the fit of the lid. So it's kind of it's a simple little pin hinge, but comes in handy that way. So, but yeah, so there's I mean, I think we kind of messed around with the lid. We ended up going with a figured maple, but I mean, you could go several, different directions on the woods and for the box and the lid to kind of give it different looks. So,
and I think that was really cool because of how the lid is attached, like you said, that it's really easy to customize that look. Because I know we had talked about veneer as an option, or you had found some spalted material around here.
Yep.
That we could have used. You could the box body is made out of walnut for the issue, and then the lid, like you said, was a curly maple. I mean, you could go same material or contrasting materials or something like that, and I think you can really personalize the box in a really cool way. I like how you did the lift handle as integral to the lid on it as well. Yeah. That was a cool detail.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like about it is that boxes can end up being super fussy, that there's just a lot of, it's like pack in as many details as you want. And it just becomes challenging to build. But this one, I think, has a really good balance of, like you said, there's stuff in there, miters and splines, and getting these hinges, the little dividers to, organize the compartment on the inside if you want. But it still feels relatively uncluttered.
Yeah. And like with these small projects, usually doesn't take a lot of material to make. It's more in the setup. So as Mark was making the box, I think he ended up assembling 3 or 4 other box carcasses because he knew that this would make a good like gift or Christmas project. So he has already jump started on his gift giving season with making a few of these. So
we're recording this podcast late September for early October release, and you can easily still knock out quite a few of these before the holidays, just to let you know. So there you have it. The project that I wrote for this issue was the clamp-on router table. I called it the small shop router table. It's one that Chris designed. And this was born out of the fact that Chris has designed a lot of router tables for us. And it's really easy to think like, what can you do different with a router table? But what I like about it is that we'll call it a benchtop design, but it's basically just the router table itself and gets clamped to a bench. So that means when the router table is not being used, it's a much smaller piece of equipment to store somewhere.
Like folds flat against the wall.
Yeah, like you could just slip it on a shelf a lot easier than you could with say a small benchtop router table, which is usually just a small cabinet with a router table top on it, which becomes this large box that you now have to find someplace for in your shop. I think Chris did a good job on the fence on it as well, and how the fence attaches with some adjustable handles that are anchored by these big blocks to provide clamping pressure so the fence doesn't shift in the middle of a cut. The fence also incorporates a little bit of dust collection on it. So this is one of those where I love this project so much in writing about it that I've decided to make my own. So I have that in process here.
Isn't that how you got your last router table too?
See?
He's never met a router table he didn't love.
Right. Yeah. This is why I don't.
It's just poetic.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Fair. But let me tell you about that is Chris did one a couple of years ago, what I would call a full-size router table. Router table with
it's like a 3/4 size.
There you go.
2/3 size.
Yeah.
2/3 size router table.
Yeah. It's a freestanding router table. Great look to it. We keep one here in the shop, and I did a version of it for YouTube to build one, thinking that it would be perfect for my workshop. And in many ways it is, because I have a small space and needed a full-size router because I have a Porter Cable 690 and some half-inch shank bits for joinery and things like that I really wanted to use. So I built it, put it in my shop. Great. Fit right where I thought it would. Lived with it for a little while and then realized that when I'm not using it, it takes up a lot of space. Mm-hmm. And it meant that I had to shift where my planer was, which means that there were a couple of drawers in my lumber rack that I really couldn't open unless I moved the planer cart out of the way. So when things start to get tile puzzle like that, then I kind of rebel. And I either don't end up using those drawers, which feels like a waste, or you just get frustrated because you're constantly moving stuff around and not building things. So
I'm only laughing because I have a lathe for sale right now because I have too many lathes because I'm the same way. I'm only laughing because of that. I know. I understand it. It sounds like a great idea until you live with it. And I think that's where, I think you touched on it in your editor's letters, like leave yourself room for change. Like always leave yourself room for change.
Yeah. And I think we had that episode a few episodes ago where we talked about tool buying and the whole like buy once, cry once kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that was falling when this issue was going out because I feel like it's the same way with shop setup and even like shop built jigs and fixtures where my personality is to be a little bit more permanent on stuff like that. But that eliminates the fact that we grow and change as woodworkers, but then our shops change based on the kinds of things that we work on. John's going to do probably more home improvement kind of projects in his shop than furniture projects. Well, that's going to really inform tools and layout and stuff like that. So same thing in my shop. I thought that a router table was so important, it needed to be a stationary tool. Router table is important, but it doesn't need to be a fixed stationary tool. It can be something that's well designed, but still a benchtop thing. So which is why I'm building this one. And I'm making some modifications aesthetically as well as functionally because I have a shop-built router lift that you two did for a video. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest videos that we've ever
Is it
done.
the greatest? Question mark?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Might be.
Right. Might be. I'll put a link to that one on our show notes page for that.
Oh, why do you do that to people?
Yeah. And then I'm also going to change up how I do the fence on it because I did a fence for the small router table that I still have that I use a lot. So I'm going to do like a version 2.0 of that one. So anyway, I think it's a great project. And it's also one of those things where it's like helping you to think about what kind of woodworker you are when you're building projects. Mm-hmm. Another project that's in here, this was like other than John's box, I feel like the rest of these projects are all Chris Fitch, right?
Feels like it.
Because he did.
There's Dylan.
There's two. Yep.
What did Dylan do? Oh, Dylan had the.
He had the drafting table. Called the Creative Workstation.
Yes.
Yeah, and that project I think was really cool, partially because his inspiration with that one a little bit are like map drawers and big flat file cabinets, which have a fun appeal to them. And then So he designed this table, or this, we called it a creative workstation because, like, who does architectural drafting anymore? Nobody really. But you could use it for paper crafts, or if you were a collector of posters or artwork or something like that, that you could keep those in the drawers, display it on the adjustable surface, that kind of thing. And it was fun to watch Mark building that project because there's a lot of really thick white oak in it. And it turned out to be approximately 3 metric tons when we started moving that thing around. So, but yeah, I think that's a really cool project. Chris also did a Maloof inspired rocking chair, which he did out of solid cherry.
Yep.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I would say this is a, like you said, a Maloof inspired, but without a lot of the super shaping elements that scare people off of a Maloof rocker.
Right.
Like there's not all that sculptural stuff on this that there would be on a standard Maloof. There's a little bit of it, but not all of it.
Yeah. Right. And I think you're exactly right, because I think a lot of people are drawn to that look. But the more you look at it and think about it, it's like the way, the legs and the seat blend together, having to account for all of that extra material when you're joining these pieces together, and then to sculpt and flow them together without it looking clunky or like poorly Play-Doh shaped.
Yep.
Is a challenge. And I think that's where Chris fought his inner demons on that one, because he really wanted to do something like that. But then it was like, hey, let's just acknowledge the fact that these are separate pieces joined together in a way that highlights a lot of the Maloof appeal, but like as a stepping stone, if that makes sense.
To be fair, with anybody that has the drive, I guess, to take on a Maloof rocker in the Maloof style, it's not a big stretch to go from this to that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, somebody could start with this and say, okay, I want to go full Maloof on this. I want to blend all the joints. I know I need to cut those dados in the seat a little bit deeper so I have room to blend everything. Like, it's not a stretch. If you have a little bit of know-how and you're wanting to take that step.
Yeah. But if you've always liked those pieces and want something of that flavor in your home, this is a good one.
If you want to go 2/3 Maloof.
2/3. Yeah. But I also think that, like a lot of Maloof's chairs were made from like number 2 walnut, where it had sapwood streaks and kind of wackadoodle grain patterns in different parts. And it ended up playing really well with that shaping. This is the same thing, where you could have, we did cherry. I think there was all same color, but if you found some cherry that just looked really cool but had sapwood streaks in it, like you can incorporate that and turn it into a pretty eye-catching piece.
And then we had a YouTube video with Chris shaping a seat. Was that with this rocker?
No, the video that we have is for the TV show when we did the
chair,
the Welsh stick chair.
Okay.
And we showed Chris shaping the seat, but a lot of those same principles and tool motions are on that. So there's a video that goes with that. I'll put that seat shaping video.
There you go.
Right. We got it. First try. Put that in on the...
be kind of intimidating for like the common woodworker, is like how to shape that. But I think he breaks that down pretty well.
Yeah.
Into steps. So.
Can I tell you my biggest issue with this issue of Woodsmith?
Okay. Bring it.
I'm not listed as a contributing photographer. Gosh dang it.
Wow.
I got photos in there, yo.
Oh yeah.
There's photos of you in here.
There
Page
are
11.
photos of me that I
Page
took.
11.
That I took.
Yeah, selfies. And readers'
Selfie.
tips. On
Oh
the
yeah,
lathe.
that's it. Todd doesn't acknowledge selfie photos. That's the problem.
There we go. Which ones are yours?
The lathe tips.
The lathe ones. A
Oh.
lot of the COBs for the miters or the circular saw article are mine.
Okay.
Logan Whitmer.
I would like to see an addendum published next issue,
Yeah, I'll put a correction. on
publicly
there.
apologizing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Just kidding. I'll take my royalty check and be over.
Yep.
There we go.
As long as you're getting paid for these tips.
That's true.
Checks in the mail.
All right, good.
Yep. All right. What else do we have for projects? We talked about the creative workstation, keepsake box, chair, round
The
table.
coffee table.
The coffee table.
It's a
Which
handsome
I
little coffee
think,
table.
personally, out of all of those, that one appeals to me the most.
Okay.
But I will say this, and I don't mean this in a bad way by any means. It looks like it could be a CNC project, too.
Yeah, I think so. I'd agree with that.
There's nothing about it that says this is not able to be done on a CNC. Again, not that that's a bad thing. It just is. So it's interesting to me because I think Phil would agree with this, and John would probably agree with this as a designer. A lot of the designers we have and have had, they have their very particular aesthetic. I can tell you when it's a Dylan designed project. Like, you can almost pick out every single project. If you've been there for years, you could say, I know who designed that. I know who designed that. I know who designed that. The same way that you could say after reading an article, usually you could say who wrote it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as you start reading it in their voice. At least I do.
Mm-hmm.
This definitely screams Chris Fitch to me, and it screams Chris Fitch in the style of like CNC Basecamp almost.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So again, not that it's a bad thing, and I know that's not how this was built. It just that was my first takeaway on it. And my digital editor Colin saw it, and he's like, I really like that table.
Yeah.
So I think this kind of tickles his mid-century appeal a
Right.
little bit.
Which is funny because that's kind of what we ended up referring it to. Eric wrote it and he called it, like a mid-century piece, which you can get that, but I feel like there's a style of mid-century furniture that just kind of looks a little bubbly and cartoony.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that end of the spectrum throws some people off, or a lot of people off.
I feel like you could call this modern, mid-century modern. Like,
there you go.
Or like
it's
modern
very
Danish.
very stylish for today. Like, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that's from the '50s." Type thing. So
Yeah. A couple of seasons ago, Chris did another coffee table, like a country style one that we did on the TV show. And I'll put a plan link up for that along with a photo here, because I mean, let's be honest, coffee tables to a certain extent can all end up looking familiar, but you can really see the Chris Fitchiness of both of these when you see them side by side.
Yeah.
And just shows how our designers, like you said, Logan, like you can look at it and be like, that's Chris Fitch, but it's still mid-century modern.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They each have their own flavor on something. Like, it may be a certain style, but there's like this Chris Fitch mid-century, or there's the, Dylan Baker mid-century. Like the drafting table. Every day could have told you that was a Dylan Baker design. Like, because a lot of Dylan stuff, he went to school for, I think, industrial design. Is that right?
sounds right.
Yeah.
Something like that, where that's the same thing that Colin went to school for. They both have this very modern. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean it to sound bad, almost like a flat pack style look for some of the stuff. Like, it's from an industrial type design that appeals to a lot of people, whereas some of Chris's stuff ends up being a little bit more like. That's definitely not a flat pack style piece of furniture.
Yeah.
I think that is also pretty apparent in their interests. Dylan's working on a book of plywood furniture or plywood seating, right? Yeah. Like it's that flat pack style. Like I think that appeals to him.
Right.
That style of furniture. So
yeah,
run with it, man. And he is.
Yeah. Well, it's being able to use a certain type of material to its fullest extent.
100%. Yep.
So I like it.
Because like that drafting table, you're not going to go buy a drafting table of that quality.
Right.
Like you just won't.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants something in that aesthetic, built well, this is it.
Yeah. Yep. So there you have it. That's Woodsmith issue 275. It's available on newsstands. If you can find a newsstand, it's usually there. Look a couple of rows back. Pull all the Woodsmiths to the front, like we do around here. Help
Wood Magazine to the back.
Yep, help them to sell. So you want to check that out. I think that wraps up another episode of the ShopNotes podcast. We'll see you next time. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, you want to send those to us. Email address, as always, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Or you can put them in the comments section on our YouTube channel. I try to read a bunch of those out at the beginning of every episode. It's a good place to interact with what we have here on the show. Special thanks to Titebond for sponsoring today's episode. All those projects that we were talking about in Woodsmith 275 glued up with Titebond glue. So Titebond is how you keep your stuff together. Check it out, titebond.com. See you next week, everybody. Bye.